Do you love interior design but can't make the business side work? You've come to the right place. Welcome to Success by Design, mastering the business of interior design. Whether you want to elevate in your current interior design firm, start your own firm, or move the needle when it comes to your existing firm's trajectory, this is your masterclass, and I'm your host, Katie Erickson. Learn from my mistakes as I built a coast-to-coast, multi-million-dollar interior design firm. I share nearly 20 years of serving as a university professor of undergraduate and graduate business courses with you. And best of all, I bring in experts in all things business and interior design. Class starts now.
Rebecca, welcome back to the show. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you for having me back. I'm so excited to be here. I love chatting with you. I know this is going to be a good conversation.
I know. And you don't know this as the listener, but we have tried to have this conversation. We were just joking, is our third attempt because we love chatting with each other. And we wanted to sit down and have this conversation, most importantly for you as our audience, to talk about slowdowns. As we're recording this, it's a couple weeks prior to air. Tariffs are on at the moment. We were joking they may be off by the time you hear about this.
Who knows?
Who knows what's going on in the world? But one thing we're both hearing as coaches to interior designers is there's a slowdown. The reality is, and the word you used, Rebecca, I think was panic. There's a little bit of uncertainty at best, panic at worst. What am I doing? Where is it going? And one thing I'm hearing is, interest rates are up. People are not taking out home equity lines of credit to be able to do whatever it is they want to do on their home project. We have no idea what tariffs are going to fully look like manifested. There's a general fear, I think, among the consumer, a general fear among the interior designer. Shed more light on that based on what you're seeing in your coaching practice.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because what we're seeing now are homeowners that previously, like you said, Katie, were taking out lines of credit, right? I mean, I did it to do my own reno.
Yep.
And that was when money was fast and cheap. And now the interest rates have climbed slowly. They've been slowly climbing over the last few years, as we know. And there's been a few cuts, but we're still pretty high. And what we're starting to see is homeowners who are not able to afford the reno with cash on hand. Saying, do I really need to do this? Or whether it's not just the reno, it could be the new build, the second home. I even pulled the plug on building my second home out of the city because the cost kept escalating. We're in this perfect storm of materials have gone up, right?
Yes.
Post-pandemic, they're not coming down.
Nope.
Interest rates have gone up. They'll eventually settle, but they're where they're at now. And now there's this fear of what the frick is going on with all these tariff wars that are starting to take shape. And what does this mean? So there's a lot of that fear. I think it's important for you and I also to talk about that doesn't have to control us and rule us. And I think there's still an opportunity for designers in this world as it stands today to make money and do beautiful work.
I love that. I think sometimes when there is that fear, it's easy to turn into paralysis. It's fight or flight or freeze. And you're like, where do I go with this? What do? I don't know what's going on in the world. I just finished reading Mel Robbins' book, Let Them, which was so good. If you haven't read it, go read it. But reminding ourselves, let them, let me, what is in my circle of control? What can I change? I can't change that whatever's happening with Ukraine and Russia, what the tariffs are doing, whether they're on, they're off. I can't control any of that, but I can control my business and I can control how I'm choosing to market, what strategic decisions I'm making, how I'm considering staffing, how we are going to respond to tariffs. I'm going to make a plan for that. So when I try to import my product, I'm not all of a sudden set to absorb a 25% ad. There are key things that we can control. Shed more light on that for designers. Because I think when we feel like we have control and we can make a change, all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier to do so and that freeze factor goes away.
Totally. And I think, Katie, you just hit the nail on the head with what you said, is when we think and when we feel. And I think the first place we need to consider is our own mind, is the mindset. I think all good coaches should have coaches of their own.
Well said.
And I work with a coach, and she has been talking a lot about this idea that what is happening outside of us is truthfully none of our business and we can't control it. So don't let it consume your mind. We all know someone in our world who is just talking constantly about the media, talking about what's going on with Trump. Did you see Canada's reaction? What's happening with Mexico? What's happening with Ukraine? All they want to do is talk about it. It's consuming so much of their mental.
That might be my mother.
It's usually that generation. I'm not going to lie.
It's so bad. I'm I got 10 minutes and you're the only news I'm getting today because I know you're going to give it all
totally.
to me.
But just imagine Like, and some of us, we can all fall into that trap, right? Like, I find myself falling into that trap. I do not consume news the way that I used to, but I do see stuff and I think, oh my goodness. And I have to catch myself, because if I'm giving mental bandwidth to what's going on in current events, I mean, this goes all the way back to 2020, right? It was those of us that really stood out, that didn't let it control us and create so much panic and fear that we couldn't move forward. We couldn't invest in our business. We couldn't do client outreach because we assumed, well, the world is effed. There's nothing I can do. Clients don't want me. And it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you need to clear out that negative energy from your mind so that you can use that bandwidth to focus on, what can I control in my business? What can I do? Because I can tell you there is still business to be had. It's just looking a little different. And we're going to talk about that today. And where you find it, I think, is a little bit different than it's been in the last few years.
I would totally agree with you on that. In fact, I'm getting ready to speak at a conference in Seattle to a bunch of multifamily investors about design and whatnot. And one of the pre-questions that came through was along those lines of, we're seeing a slowdown, what do we do? And I'm like, well, that's the time you get strategic. And the best day to plan for a rainy day is not when it's raining. And so if you're finding yourself in a situation today where you're like, there is a slowdown, I don't have a pipeline and I am freaking out, you'll get through this. But it's also, as I lovingly tell my kids, it's a lesson learned the hard way, right? Like, sometimes we all have to, and I've had to. Don't think you're alone. And I'm sitting up here on my podium about this. You have to go through that hard time of like, I should have planned for this. And then all of a sudden, all it usually takes is once. And then you're going to see, okay, when the sun is shining, I need to be planning for that rainy day. And also, I love what you said about mindset. There are still plenty of projects getting done out here. They look different. The scope may be different. But as I was sharing with another group I was speaking with this morning, you are hiring the client. You are not hiring the project. So if one of the most influential people in your community comes to you and says, oh my gosh, I wanted to do this whole remodel. It's down to a powder bath. Will you take it? You're going to take it. Because if the client meets your requirements, great. Don't look at it through a project lens. I feel like we tend to make that mistake as designers, and that can really paralyze us in economic downturns.
Yeah, and I think the designers that are feeling it the most are the newer generation of designers.
Agreed.
I'm not saying that's true for everyone, but if you're more established and you have a more established name, it is going to be different. You might get those repeat clients who maybe don't have the full scope that they used to, but they're coming back to you. But what I'm seeing is it's the designers who really started in the last 5 years. That's where the challenge is.
COVID designers, because how many people went remote in COVID and were working for firms and then said, screw it, I'm going to do my own. And that worked great when the economy was great. But this is, to your point, their first downturn, and we've got the paralysis going on.
Totally. And it's also those who were in corporate, right? Who always longed for the creative business or always wanted to be in design and just never felt like they had the opportunity. And then they either got laid off or they just didn't like the job or they got called back to work. And they're like, screw it, I'm going to go and do this on my own. And 2021 was like a magical time, right? Work was just everywhere. You know, people were turning down projects. We had vendors that were taking extra months to get projects done. You know, there was delays in all the materials and products and windows and all the things. And so there was this false sense of abundance in a way that designers who were newer thought, this is amazing. But the reality is it's not always like that. In fact, that was the first time I'd seen that much craziness with just money being thrown into design, people renovating, decorating, building in the 17 years I've been doing this. And so that is where I think the mindset is going to matter the most, is for the newer designers who haven't seen the boom bust over the last couple of decades. It's those new designers who their baseline is a really high number of inquiries. They've built up their team and they're feeling nervous and scared and worried. Is this really for me? Maybe I should go back to corporate, or maybe this isn't what I want to do. I just want to reassure you, if you're one of those designers, you'll get through this if you want to.
I think that's the key. If you want to, if you're willing to change your mindset, if you're willing to look at other income streams. But I think your point is dead on. So many of them started in what I think we could lovingly call, and I watched this movie over the weekend, but the Marie Antoinette era. And it just feels like Versailles, right? Like we came into an abundant amount of luxury. And then it's like, no, there's plenty of times where you're riding the boat in as the pilgrims. And like, that's the reality of it. But you can also be prepared for that. What would you say to the designers out there that are like raising their hand as they're driving to pick up kids from school and going, yeah, that's me, 100% me. Now what?
So now what you need to do, besides really work on your mindset, you need to have, if you ever read that book, The Gap and the Gain, I'm sure you have, is you need to be in the gain. You need to be in the gain. You can't focus on the gap. And if anyone doesn't have that book, go get it. It's by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. You need to get into that mindset on a daily basis. Like, what is going well? Look at your wins. Be in the gain.
Yes.
But then secondly, you need to get strategic about your marketing. Where are you showing up? Where are you spending your time? And I've got some tips that I can share with you guys today of what I'm seeing work for designers, especially those designers who are newer and they're hungry and they don't have decades of experience behind them.
I would love to hear about that because I think the number one thing and the number one mistake that gets made in the marketing department is revenues are down, cut marketing. I don't necessarily always see a direct ROI. I'm not sure we absolutely need it. We need that money to do other things, cut marketing. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. That is the last place that you cut because it's like scuba diving. Do not cut off your oxygen, right? And marketing is your oxygen when you are 30 meters under and you're like, how do I get back to the surface? That is not the time you cut your air supply.
Yeah. You know what happens? I mean, I've been guilty of this too, is that once we get really busy, right? If you're busy and you've got a lot of projects on the go, you're so busy focused on serving those clients, designing those projects, working with your team, doing whatever you need to do to really make an incredible impact. Because as designers, I know we care so much about our clients and the outcome and the design.
Right.
It's when you're busy that the marketing falls off because you're not thinking about it because you're so damn busy. You're not thinking, I need to do outreach. I need to fill my pipeline. And so that's what happens. And then those projects start to come to a close. And I know every designer, I've had this conversation with hundreds of designers who have that moment of panic where they're like, oh, shoot, where's my next project coming from? Because they've been so focused on serving their clients and working in their business that all of a sudden they come up for air, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, the oxygen's run out.
100%. Okay, you alluded to it earlier when you said, you know what's working, what's not working. Share it with our audience. What are you seeing work and not work?
I love these conversations because sometimes when I share this information, I actually just did a boot camp where I talked about this. The boot camp's over, but we talked about how to attract your premium client or really get better clients. Yep. And everyone's expecting to hear about Instagram, SEO, right? All these complex marketing tactics that involve the internet. Mm-hmm. In fact, I don't talk about any of those tactics really at any great length. And what I think and what I see is the most impactful way to get clients fast is focusing local.
Yep.
And so what I mean by that is showing up in really unique and creative ways in the areas that you want to serve in your local communities so that you can make those personal connections. Because this is a people business. Like, Katie, you know that. This is all about relationships.
100%.
And you would have to show up on Instagram for so long, doing so much content or YouTube or whatever to get the right people into your world. And then they may not even be local. So you have to figure out how to serve them internationally, which could be a really great long-term game plan or marketing plan. However, if you are interested in doing homes, I'm talking residential design. It could apply to commercial as well, like if you're doing restaurants and anything local. So here are some tips that I shared inside the bootcamp and I'll share with all of you and we can have a conversation. I'm super curious, Katie, if you've had experience with this or if you've seen this. But the very top of my list is building relationships with local realtors.
Yep.
It is so overlooked. We talk about this, but people don't do it. No one's actually doing it. I think designers get nervous because it feels salesy, but that's why realtors are the best first step because realtors are like sales mavens.
Totally.
They love sales. They're not going to judge you for it. They're going to say, whoa, this girl has some chutzpah, like she's coming to me. Offer value to that realtor, right? Drive around a neighborhood, look at the realtor signs on the lawn, and see who has a presence, who's selling houses that are the type of houses I would want to work on.
Yep.
And then reach out to them, take them out to coffee, show up at their office with coffee, offer maybe even to provide value. You could write a blog post for them. One thing that I've done is I've gone to speak to their local realtor meetings. Some realtors have a group that they're a part of, and they have continuing education for their realtors, like once a month or once a week. You can go talk about design, what you're seeing, trends, whatever it might be. What are people asking for? You could offer home staging tips. You can do so much that will provide value to them. And then the big tip that I share with my designers inside my course that I'm going to just share with you guys here, because I think it's so good and it's so powerful, is once you build that relationship, or even in the early days of building that relationship with a realtor, offer something that'll be of value to them and their client.
Yes.
So one of the ideas that I talk about inside my course is what you could do is create a complimentary consultation. You make a really pretty postcard that says this is a complimentary consultation courtesy of Susie Mac Real Estate, what have you. And you go to your realtor friend, who's your friend now, and you say, listen, I don't typically do this, but this year I want to offer 2 or 3 complimentary consultations for you to gift to the right client. So, and then you have to come up with parameters because you don't want them just gifting it to anyone.
No, you're not looking for that 2-bedroom, 2-bath client.
Exactly. So you have to be specific. And if that's what you want, great. But what you might say is, if you're going to gift this to one of your clients, it would likely be someone who has just purchased their second home. Likely it's around $1.5 million, $2 million in value, and they're looking to do a whole home renovation. So you're setting parameters. So that realtor is going to hold on to that complimentary consultation until they have the right fit client. It makes them look good to their client. Now, this is where I'm saying you're not going to charge for it. This is one of those few times where I say do it for free and get in the home. And even if that client doesn't hire you, it's not really about that. Let's be honest. It's about being in good standing with the realtor and getting your name out there locally as a designer who is one to look out for.
That is such a great tip that you just shared. And I love what you said about go find the people who are salesy and let them sell you. That is so brilliant because I think as designers, we're like, I want to create in the confines of my own space. I do not want to go out there and sell my services, right?
Totally.
I mean, one thing I always say when we're coaching to this too is don't look at it as sales. They have a problem and you're going to help them solve it. So you're solving the problem for the realtor. You're solving the problem for the client of, oh gosh, I bought a $2 million home. I see the potential, but now we have to actually gut the thing. Where do I go and how does this work? I think when we put ourselves in the role, especially because we are so female dominated, we tend to mom things. And so it's like if we can fix a problem, all of a sudden our mind goes to a whole different place, back to mindset again. It's like, I'm actually helping someone. And you are. It's just repositioning and reframing your context to see it as that.
Yeah.
It's such a great tip about realtors and getting involved in your local community. Because one thing I always say is go find out where your ideal client is spending time and go spend time there. If they're volunteering and they're part of the Symphony Foundation, why are you not a part of the Symphony Foundation? It's top of consciousness again. And if we're top of consciousness and they are like, oh yeah, I'll see her Wednesday because we're doing this nonprofit, blah, 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 blah. I'll just ask her about your project. All of a sudden you become the person that's constantly being mentioned. And that's exactly where you want to be. Because like you said, you won't close every deal, but you're going to close a lot of things. And once you get to that top of consciousness, it comes up over and over and over again.
You know, we once had a student who said to us, you know, I keep getting referred by all these moms at the local pool club. I don't know, pool club. She's in Connecticut. I guess it's kind of like a golf and country club, but just a pool. She's like, do you think I should join? And all of us in the group were like, yeah. But if you're like, okay, that sounds really nice, Katie and Rebecca, like I'd love to be attending the symphony all the time, or I'd love to get seasons tickets to the ballet or join the golf and country club, but I don't have that money right now. There's other ways to get in front of those people. The first step, like you said, Katie, is knowing where they're spending their time.
Yeah.
Are they going to a ski club? Like for us, we have these private ski clubs up in Ontario, and you know, we go every weekend. There's lots of them. But those would be great opportunities. Maybe you're not a member of the ski club, but could you contribute to their silent auction, to a fundraiser that they're having? How can you show up to be in front of them in these places until you maybe are at a place in your career, your business where you want and can afford to join?
Yeah. And volunteer. You don't know how many of the wives are volunteering while their surgeon husbands are off doing surgery for the day. Where are they volunteering? Where are they spending your time? That costs you nothing. You get to do good work and you get to find those people, which I think is critical.
Totally.
Let's talk about diversification of income streams. So I design. Rebecca, all I've ever known is design. I do designing really well. How do I diversify my income stream? Yeah, I'm sitting here. It's a rainy day. It's not going well. What do you even mean by that? And how do I do it?
So diversifying your income can come in many ways. That could be something as simple as adding an additional revenue stream, like an affiliate link, right? I know a lot of designers have been dipping their toes in the water with that. An Amazon affiliate link, maybe I post on social and people can buy. That is a slow way to grow unless you have a very big audience and following. I think I tried that for a little while, and that's when I had even a decent sized audience, and it was like so much more work than it was worth.
Yes.
Oh, I got $10 from Amazon towards my next book purchase.
There will be $20. So I'm still paying $10. Yes.
But diversifying, I think this is actually an interesting conversation that I would love to have with you, because I don't know that I really believe in diversifying your revenue streams to the extent that people think you need to.
Agreed.
I think what happens is we get fixated on, I need to have multiple revenue streams. Like, look at all the billionaires. They have all these multiple revenue streams, but I don't even know where I heard it. And I wish I could give credit to the person. But they said something like, those multimillionaires and billionaires are diversified now. But in order to get to that $1 million mark or whatever it was, they focused in on one thing, on one business. And I almost teach the opposite inside my program, which is I teach designers to have a core offer. Doesn't mean you can't also offer others, but get really good at that one core service offering. Be known for that one thing. Stop offering a smorgasbord of like paid consultations, but I could also go shopping with you. I could do just floor plans. Do you want me to do full service?
Yeah.
No, you are confusing your client. So I think if you are going to diversify, this is my opinion, it doesn't look like multiple offers to the same client. But what it could be is a totally different offer to a totally different ideal client avatar, right? You might have a different demographic or somebody else who's not really near wanting to have full service design, but maybe you help a realtor with home staging to diversify your personal income.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think you make a great point. And it's fun to sit here. This is why I love every conversation we have, because it's so good to hear your perspective on it. I look at diversification as I think a lot of us in design do design, and we do design well. But like, we had a great conversation with Renee Biere, only girl on the job site, right?
Yeah, I love Renee. Renee's one of my also podcast besties like you.
I know. I feel like we have a tribe. And she made a great point. She's like, if you're not project managing your projects, you're leaving money on the table. And I'm like, absolutely. Or if you're not selling furniture and you're only designing it, you're leaving money on the table. In fact, it was really great. I happened to be in Arizona last week and met a contractor down there who happened to have their client in town, who only comes in every 2 weeks. And he was very gracious and introduced us. She gets talking about her past designer that she had worked with. And I'm like, I always love asking why it didn't work, because then I don't have to make that mistake. I'm like, why didn't it work? And she's like, she really wanted to sell me the furniture and she wouldn't work with me unless I bought the furniture. And I thought, that a girl, you go girl. And she walked off the job.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I might have handled that a little differently, but
I don't know that walking off the job was the right response, but who actually really knows what happened?
Yeah, it's like 2 sides to every story, maybe 3. But yeah, I thought it was just a really interesting point. I'm like, one, we should have had a lot better contract in place, right? Where that was addressed, where you hire our services and we carry it to completion. That's why we always say in our firm, we're concept to completion. But I just thought it was really interesting. And I think a lot of times we think, to your point, which is a really good one, we have to go way outside. We have to offer something completely new. We have to do our own line of candles. We have to do, and I'm like, slow the roll. When we talk diversification of income streams, it is not making what we have more complicated. It's looking at where we're leaving money on the table that actually is also doing a disservice to the client. Because if I'm the client and you can carry something from concept to completion for me, there's going to be a lot fewer speed bumps in that road than if You hand it off to me, who hands it off to the GC, who hands it off to their super project manager, who may or may not call you about the thickness of that grout line, because by this point, we're 4 people back.
Totally.
And I think a lot of times we miss that. And it's because it goes right back to what you were saying, mindset. I think there's just a fear factor with it. And it's like, no. Renee said something so good. She said, you have to know just enough. You have to know just enough.
Totally.
Most people in life know just enough. And then you can find the people who know more and do better.
Yeah, and that's where having your right team, building a team of trades around you where you can default. And I say all the time, like, it's okay if you don't know the answer to a question, especially I think of designers in the beginning. They're at consultations, right? They're at a consultation and they're nervous. And then the client asks them a question. And they think they need to say something, but they don't know. Do I need to add a pony panel to the electrical for this renovation? And the designer's like, what the F is a pony panel? And then they think, oh my God, what am I going to say? Like, I've been that designer. I've been in that place. That's where you say, listen, we work with really qualified, master electricians, or whatever you call them. And that's an area they will work with us to ensure blah, blah, blah. Like, you can rely on your trades. I want to go back to that question of diversification. Is that diversifying? Like, do you think that by adding additional revenue streams in that way is considered diversification? Or is it just enhancing your revenue? You know what I mean?
That's a great
question. I don't know. I don't see it as diversification as much.
No, technically that is correct. I think as designers, we get pigeonholed. We pigeonhole ourselves into saying, I design, this is what I do. And we don't think about all of the ways we can be generating money and creating a better client experience within that realm. And we see it as diversification, which is why I like to use that term. Technically, if you asked in business school, they would agree with you 100%, right? It's not diversification. Go out and building your own candle line. That's diversification, technically. But I think sometimes in our mindset, back to mindset again, it's like, I do this and that's what I do. And I want to say, yes. Here's the thing. I feel like as creatives too, we also get bored and we start wanting new stuff. And I'm like, you don't have to go crazy and go out and do a candle line. I don't know why I'm on candle lines today, but you can look at what you're doing right now. That's not going to take a whole new system, a whole new process, a whole new set of vendors, and really just add and enhance, to your point, I love that word, enhance what you're already doing and get after it. Like, there's so many opportunities, and build those relationships on those rainy days. You should have the relationships with your vendors, with that master electrician, because when he runs into a problem on a job and he needs a designer to figure out how we're going to deal with this, the business should go both ways. And that should be the win as well. Like, not only are you directly recruiting clients, I love how you're doing the B2B with the realtors, that business to business model. There's so many other business-to-business models where other people can do your selling for you. Like, what are some that you see besides the realtors? Because that is such a golden nugget.
So another one that I've seen a lot of the designers in my community have done in the past year is join a BNI.
Love it.
It's like a business improvement association that's local. Anyhow, they have them across North America, a BNI, and you can join a local group. They pull a group together where there's only one of you. So there won't be another interior designer, but there will be other business owners from that community. So it could be a florist, it could be a contractor, it could be a plumber, it could be a marketing agency, it could be, I don't know, a candle maker. This is the episode of candles.
I love you. You know you're getting one for coming on the show now.
Sure hope so. I hope it's your line.
No pressure to produce that the next week.
And it is a paid organization. It's pretty nominal what you have to pay to be a part of it. And I think the idea is that you meet once a month. I think it's once a month. It could be once a week. Don't quote me. I'm not in one. But I've heard designers having a lot of success here. And this just goes to emphasize further the power of local. And what's interesting, it's not, the candle maker's not going to afford to hire a designer. No, it's not about that. It's about who's in their network. Who are their clients? Can they bring you on? Can you give those candles, for lack of another conversation point, like, let's bring the back. Like, can you gift those candles to a client? So you're helping them. And the biggest tip that I got from the designers that are in these groups is you need to give in order to receive. So you need to, you bring that candle maker business, or you buy their candles to give to your clients. You go to that contractor and you say, hey, can you quote this job? You reach out to that plumber, like whatever it might be, and then they will start referring you. And one of my designers actually tripled her leads in literally the last 3 months, not only because of that, for other reasons, but it was extremely helpful for her to have that. And the momentum, once it gets going, and this is in our slow economy, so it is possible.
I totally agree. In fact, I was a member of a group like that back when I started my firm almost 20 years ago in Scottsdale. Incredibly helpful. And coincidentally, it met every month at a senior living facility. Well, when that senior living facility needed to be remodeled, guess who? Oh, you're here every month.
Wow.
Come take a look. Like, there's so much value in little things like that. And I love your point, too, that you mentioned earlier. We can think, oh, it's all this social media and SEO and on and on and on. Sometimes it is. It's showing up. So few people just want to show up and find the right places to plug in.
Yeah.
Especially when it's local. Okay, this cheesy question, billboards. How do you feel about billboards? I'm thinking local. Are we still doing print? How are we doing with that? What's your thought on that?
This is good.
Right?
You know, it's interesting. It's not much different than a magazine ad.
For sure.
And I had this conversation with a student actually a couple of weeks ago. I did a mastermind here in my studio, which I'd never done before, which was super fun to have people come in person. So great.
That's awesome.
And one of the designers is from a community that's just outside Toronto. It's a very luxurious vacation community.
Nice.
And she does design build there. And she was asking me about taking out an ad in a local magazine. And we had a really great conversation. And ultimately the takeaway was, yes, but in the right place. And so she is going to go to the magazine that we know comes out during the summer months when everyone's at their cottage on the lake. And it sits on the coffee table because I know I've been in those cottages on those lakes, right? It's there all summer. It's cheesy. It's a really bad magazine. It's not Architectural Digest, but it is no, really. It's
so
not
true.
great.
That's why I'm laughing so hard, because we all know exactly in our heads what you're describing.
Like, it's all basically paid ads, the stories, but it's beautifully done. It's not a bad quality, but it sits on the coffee tables of these multimillionaires at their cottages. And so they're going to have guests up who are going to look for something to do. They're going to rifle through it. And so we kind of decided that made sense. But a national magazine that comes out every month maybe doesn't make sense for her because it's not hyper local and it doesn't have the same shelf life.
I love that. And I was actually just coaching a client on this. And I said, don't just buy the ad, go back and negotiate as part of the contract that you're going to write an article for them that will be in there about something that's relevant, because they need to fill those pages with quote unquote substance. And you're the expert. So write the article on what is it. And by the way, I love that in Canada, you call them cottages. We do cabins in the US. I love cottages. I want a lake cottage in another life. But when they're at the lake cottage, they need to have some sort of editorial content. And it's going to have to come from somewhere. To your point, it's 99% ads. Make that part of the deal that you're going to write an article about what we're seeing in summer cottages 2025.
Totally.
Because then it's not just a hard ad. It's I'm a subject matter expert with industry information to share with you. And that builds a whole nother layer, I feel like, of trust.
1,000%. And from my experience working with a publicist for many years, I wrote a lot of my own articles because truthfully, a lot of publications, unless they're the really big ones, have zero budget. They don't have budgets. They usually don't even have their own writers. They're freelancing out on an as-need basis. They are grateful to someone who comes to them. I would literally write the entire article about maybe trends, maybe how to do a refresh, or what's the story behind this family's renovation with the images. And I didn't get paid for it. But I went to the magazine or I went to the publication and they were just so grateful. Or you could talk to them about what type of content do your readers want to see. What you could also do is offer to be a columnist for free.
Yes.
Right? I would love to write a quarterly column. I used to write a column for the Toronto Star newspaper every single month. And I just did it. And I didn't think anybody would read it until my dad shows up one day. He's like, oh, look at this. You're in the newspaper. Oh, this is so cool. And then I realized, but he was my demographic. I'm not reading the Toronto Sun, but old white men with money are. And that's who I want to hire me.
Totally. No, it's utterly brilliant. And I love this conversation because it takes us outside of the box of what we constantly hear I want to say it's like a drumbeat over and over again in our industry is SEO, Instagram, get your pictures, on and on and on. This is so much more personal. And what I love is it feels so much more authentic. Like I would rather be a columnist and share my information. Back to your point that we both love educating. Like educate your clients. They don't know what they don't know either. And these people didn't get where they are by pretending they know it all. They got there because they were curious and they figured it out, which I think is so invaluable. I want to go back as we wrap up to your point about find the one thing you do and do it well, because it's such a good one. If I'm sitting here today and I'm like, gosh, I don't know, and maybe that's why it's a rainy day for me, because I've been trying to do it all. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life when I grow up. Sometimes we feel this way, all of us, myself included. How do you help people drill down to that one thing that is their glimmer, their happy place?
I think you need to ask yourself this question. What is it that I do when people say to me, wow, thank you, you're so good at that?
That's a great question.
Because the answer might be surprising. It might be, oh, you're so good at wallpaper. Like it's not probably going to be something like that. It's like that, what's my superpower question. I think years ago I did a course by Marie Forleo, the B School course, and she had us email our friends and family with one question, which is, if I had a superpower, what would you say my superpower is? And it was asking people who already knew who you were, or maybe you could ask people who've worked with you, and then just wait and see what they say. Because what's interesting is hearing from someone else's perspective. What is your superpower? And, you know, for me, when I did that exercise, some people said, you're really great at bringing people together. You're easy to talk to. But at the time, some of them were, wow, you really make homes feel so cozy and inviting. I don't know anyone else who makes a home feel the way you do. You really listen. You're such a great listener. Those were really great replies for me. In my interior design business, I could see, okay, where am I really leaning into that with my offer? And how does this sort of differentiate me or make me stand out to a potential client? So I started to talk about, we're really great listeners. Because guess what? A pain point for a lot of homeowners is that they hire designers who don't listen and just do whatever they think will look good. Or cozy and inviting. That's my vibe. I need to lean into that. And so I think asking that question is a really great start. It's not going to tell you exactly what to do and what service to offer, but I think the more we can learn about ourselves, where we excel, you know, doing any kind of personality test, it sounds so silly and cheesy, but it can be very eye-opening.
Mm-hmm.
And then lean into, of the services you offer, of what you do in your business, where are your strengths? Where are you really strong? And what can maybe you let go of? Maybe you aren't really great with the technical stuff. Like maybe that's not your jam. So do you tweak your service or do you bring in support in the areas where you need that? Not every designer needs 3D renderings. I grew a multi-million-dollar design firm without any 3D.
That's amazing. See,
right?
Yeah, there's two really key points that stand out to me as you were talking. One, don't be afraid to take off your plate what isn't your glimmer, what isn't what you're designed to do, what isn't your happiness. Outsource it. I can't tell you the last time I got into a CAD file.
Oh, God, years.
Thank you.
And I was really good at CAD. I was like top of my class.
Right?
I was very proud of myself. I freaking love AutoCAD, but I haven't touched it in like 8 years.
I know. And that's like, I'm like, that's not my happy place. There's other people who would rather just like sit at their machine and draw and be so happy. They're like, don't ever make me talk to a client. I'm like, oh, we got a client. How can we help you? Like, so excited to hear about your problems and how we can fix them, right? But I think there's also, when you find that glimmer spot, there is no shame in figuring out how to monetize it. Figure out how to monetize it in your firm. Figure out how you can turn it into something profitable that helps your clients in a more significant way, and run hard after it. And then, don't be afraid to do the other things or hire the other people to do them who that is their glimmer. Can you imagine if you had somebody at every stage of your project where what they were doing was their glimmer and happy place? What would that project look like at the end? It does not have to be you. I always like to say, if you're trying to be all things to all people, you are being nothing to no one. So get after what you love and then go find the other people to help you out when it's something you don't.
I love that. Such good advice.
Oh, right back at you. Love having these conversations with you, Rebecca. And if you think this is a great conversation and you want to keep it going, we're going to go over to Rebecca's show and we'll put the link in the show notes because we're going to continue this conversation on her podcast and just do a swap. So make sure you hit the follow button down below and flop over to hers because there is more to come.
Yes. Resilient by design, baby. Come on over.
Love it. We'll see y'all there. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Coaching Corner. I am so glad that you have chosen to stick around for this part of the show because this is where it does get really personal. And I'm not going to lie. I launched in 2007 and then the recession of 2008. What an interesting time to launch a business. Needless to say, it was unique. It was challenging. It was hard. And it was also kind of a blessing because when you start in a slowdown, the only way to go is up. Unlike what you're hearing about in my conversation with Rebecca today, where we started in the era of wealth, if you started your business during COVID, right? And then you had to figure out, okay, what do we do now that we're here and interest rates are where they are, tariffs are where they are at the moment? How do you work through that? I will say so much of working through a business is just hanging in there and planning. Sitting on the other side of 20 years now of almost owning a business, I've seen highs and I've seen lows. I'm pretty sure that's a song, but it is a reality. And when you know how to ride the highs and put away for a rainy day, and when you know that the lows are coming and what to do during them, each one gets less emotionally impactful. So if you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know if I have the stomach for this, Katie, this feels really intense. It's okay. This isn't the first time it's happened. And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I can guarantee it won't be the last. And so figuring out emotionally how to sit in that space and then also intellectually how to plan and make good sense for those days is going to help these become far less impactful to you and to your leadership. In fact, I'm going to give you action steps specifically beyond what Rebecca's sharing on our strategy session episode coming up. So keep an eye out for that. That's coming next week. And we're going to go through actionable steps of how to implement, how to plan for that rainy day and what you should be doing now that I advise my coaching clients on. You heard from Rebecca about what she says. I'm going to add to that conversation, clarify some of it, and go even deeper. I hope to see you there.
And that's the closing bell. I hope you've gathered valuable insight from our conversation today, equipping you to thrive in your interior design business. Don't forget to hit that follow button to never miss an episode. And if you have burning questions or specific topics you're curious about, explore our episode library, or better yet, book a strategy session directly with me at colorworks.coach. Until next time, see you in the studio. It's our virtual community, and the link is below.